Hey folks, I'm Jonathan Helmuth, and welcome to the Worship Table Podcast. It's a See Now podcast, and we're really excited to have you tuning in and listening to this conversation. And I'll tell you what, we had talked about a couple of different things that we were potentially going to discuss today. And as we're sitting down, we started talking about something a few minutes ago that, man, I really want to dig into and explore. And just to bring our listeners up to speed a little bit, I'm in the process of actually transitioning out of a worship leading role. And the reason this topic has been on my mind so much recently is because I've had to really think about it over the last year as I'm kind of training my replacement, as I'm trying to leave this worship team in a really healthy place, as I transition out of a leadership role and into a role of more just serving the church. Not in that same, still in leadership, still in service, but it's just in a different way, right? This topic's really been on my mind. And as it would have it, in the last year, I've wanted to actually sit down with the two of you individually and have this conversation and pick your brains. And you're both here with me today.
Come on.
Hey, what are the chances?
So here we go. So here's the question. Here's what I really wanted to pick your all's brains about is, what does it look like to be a leader of leaders in the church and on the worship team specifically? What does it look like to lead worship leaders, to raise them up in a healthy way, to lead them well, to disciple them? Because it's different. It's different than, other leadership roles, because the worship team leadership is different, but it's also different than just leading somebody that's, there are people that serve that they're not leaders, right? They're there just to kind of put their head down and do their job. And when you're trying to lead somebody that is also going to be a leader as well, it's different. So I wanted to throw that out there and get your feelings on it, pick your brains a little bit about on what does it look like to be a leader of leaders. So
good. You want to go first, or
you can, I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Ladies first.
All right,
I
Amy.
guess ladies first. Well, I'm Amy Frazier with See Now, and I think you have to be a massive delegator. A really great delegator when it comes to leadership roles, but you have to evaluate who can do what. I had a dear friend that mentored me years ago, and he said, make sure that you have the right people sitting at the table, because if you don't, it's going to be really messy for you, in the end, because there's a lot of training and you definitely want people to succeed, because your own worship teams, you only have a certain amount of people there, and you've got to kind of be careful with how to rotate them. And then I think it's just really knowing the people that you're serving, spending time with them, knowing their strengths and weaknesses, and then assessing them. Where would they be best, located on the team? And I think leaders are the same way when it comes to See Now. We have tons of great leaders in the city, and you don't really need to mentor them, but there are some things that they're really good at, and maybe they don't see that, but when you put them in that role, you're like, they shine. It's just like they are perfect at that. Yeah. And so I think it's just God gives us the wisdom as leaders to really see through who is good in that position, and then delegating that and giving it away and not micromanaging it. Right? Yeah. Don't just, I'm going to give it to you, but my hands are still here, but really give it away and walk away for a little bit. Let them process it. Let them make mistakes. And then they come back to you and go, help me, Amy, or help, Shannon, help, or Jonathan. But sometimes it's hard to do that because they're going to fall, they're going to fail at something. But at the same time, that's how we all learned. We failed, and we had to get back up and dust ourselves off and keep going. That's part of leading people. We're just not perfect leaders. And I think a lot of that has to do when you're leading leaders is your past mistakes have to be something that you really have learned from for the future. And for me personally, that has been a huge blessing. Like, I could have said, well, I failed at this, I'm done. No, get back in the game and learn, and really seek God's presence, seek the Holy Spirit to advise you on how to make those things better. When those things pop up again, maybe your reaction wasn't that great. How can you be a better leader in those situations so that when it happens again, now you're being mentored. You're mentoring someone who's watching you from the other side. And I think that goes a long way too. But delegation, assessing who's really got the strengths and weaknesses on your team, and then learning from past mistakes is really what I'm still learning and still walking through, as we all do, but just
man, I think at the end of the day, for me, I've just made so many mistakes. Like, I think that I think it's so important to walk with vulnerability,
Mm.
show the withered hand, so often.
That's
I
good.
think there's uh, as I've grown over the last several years, one of the biggest things is oftentimes we uh, overcomplicate things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always looking for a way to simplify things. Like, remember a leader just recently asked me, "Hey, what's your vision for the department, or what's your vision for worship?" And I realized that everything that I want to accomplish, whatever goal that might be, if it's, man, one day we want to cut a record, or
Yeah.
man, we want to launch campuses. We want to. I think there's something so beautiful to those opportunities. But what I really want to be known for as a leader, and what I think is most important is the discipleship of the leaders around you. I was talking to a college practicum. We have our PCLC, our People's Church Leadership College. Shameless plug, right?
I love that. That's awesome.
And I get to connect with those leaders, and we were processing, like, at the end of the day, like, what's most important when it comes to developing leaders or doing ministry, and it is discipleship.
Amen.
And everything points all the way back to in ministry. Are you spending time with Jesus?
Amen.
Are you observing a Sabbath? Like, do you have planned rest in your life?
Yeah.
Are you generous with your time, your talents, and your treasure? Like, are you doing that? When you're in a small group, do you have a place for confession, or are you just hanging out? So that there are some very, like, critical things that leaders around us, believe it or not, like, they're at your church, right? That aren't really following the Lord. They're really not disciples of Christ. They're following the culture. They're following the music. They're following the industry. And I'm not saying that's for everybody. I would just say that I have found myself in certain seasons. That's what I was following.
Yeah.
And if you really want to raise up leaders that are leading in ministry, leading the church, they have to be following Christ. And it's crazy how some of those very basic disciplines impact their leadership.
Yeah.
You talk about insecurity, they don't know the word of God. Because the word tells you you're more than an overcomer.
Yeah.
The word tells you that at the end of the day, you're not enough. You're not enough.
Right.
But Christ is enough. That in your weakness, he's strong.
That's right.
So there's so many things. You show me that somebody's struggling and their finances are stressed out, and most of the time it's because they're not budgeting or giving in their tithes or in their offerings. Like, they're lacking in generosity. So you can almost identify areas that someone's lacking in their leadership and directly go right into those areas of discipleship and those disciplines and things like that. And I think if you raise up a good disciple, you'll raise up good leaders.
Exactly. I was just going to piggyback on that. Accountability. With See Now, we try to have that as well, in a way of worship leaders, accountable to each other, or worship pastors. And it's hard to do that because there's a vulnerability that has to happen with leaders that says, I'm in financial ruin. My marriage is falling apart.
Yeah.
You know what? I haven't read the scriptures because I'm mad at the Lord because he hasn't,
Yeah.
come through on a promise.
Come on.
And so if we're really real about it, the thing that I struggle with the most with leaders and even myself is, can I be vulnerable enough to say I need help? And I really hope, and because there's so many leaders, guys, I'm telling you, in the last 2 months, I've had 5 different pastors call me and say that I need a worship pastor. They've left, or maybe they were let go, whatever the situation was. And then, we've got about 3 in our team that have had some shifting and transition. So those things, they're happening all the time, but even more recently than I've ever experienced before is like this last 2 months. And I think there's a shifting happening that, if we're not, it's not just because we're not accountable, but I think if we just kind of, hey, I'm struggling and I really need prayer, and not that they aren't, but maybe there's a way that we as leaders can just kind of like wrap our arms around somebody and say, hey, I got you. I see you. Um, how can we do that? And you do that well, Shannon. You've done that with some of our folks, and you too, Jonathan, is, if you're just recognizing people that just need prayer or need coffee, or you can just go and talk to them. So I'm just hoping that maybe there's a way that we can, as leaders all around, as we can do that, we can really be vulnerable in those times. It's just hard,
Yeah, for sure. I think, Amy, one of the things that I love about See Now is just like there are leaders, like everybody that's there is leaders of other leaders. And
Yeah.
even when you think about it, like everybody is a leader.
Yeah, right.
Because you either
Right.
you may not be leading somebody,
Yeah.
but you lead yourself,
Well,
right?
I
Like
know,
at some
yeah,
point,
yeah.
you got to
Hopefully really
identify,
yourself.
Right.
man, what is a leader and what are we
Yeah.
actually leading? Like,
Mhm.
I think in ministry, that's what we're doing is we're developing those leaders. But
Yeah.
I think there is a certain level of affinity that comes with, man, we're all carrying something.
Right.
Some of us are parents, like we're leading our families, like everybody's leading something. So I think there's a common denominator when it comes to how do I lead in every environment. And I think the core of that is how am I following Jesus? That's
Amen.
it. And I love, Jonathan, just what you were saying, like as you're making a transition, like you seem to embody that idea of, man, there is no success without a successor. So I think when you're developing someone that's coming behind you or growing with you, if you really care about those leaders and you care about the mission or what your role is or what you're leading, you just don't do things alone.
Yeah.
So I have that's a conviction that I've been growing in myself. Is it like, what am I doing planning these sets by myself?
Yeah.
What am I
Right.
doing?
Right.
Trying to
Sure.
process sequences or things like that.
Yeah.
What am I doing staffing all by myself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm taking away those opportunities for somebody to lead that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
good.
somebody, like I'll joke with some of my younger leaders, just be like, man, guys, at the end of the day, I've done plenty of this. But you actually need the rep. You need the opportunity.
Yeah.
You need to feel what it feels like to not have an answer and then have to seek the Lord for it.
Right.
And there's a difficult balance there when you're because you're talking about this dance of, well, okay, I have to control all these processes, I'm the one doing all this, but in order to, give that over to somebody and have a younger person or somebody else take responsibility of that, you kind of have to give up control of it, and you have to be willing to let something fail a little bit, right? And it's, good leadership doesn't say, well, see, right? That didn't go well. Oh, well,
Yeah.
you must not be very good at this. Good leadership is saying, listen, this is going to be a stretch for you. It might be difficult. It's all right. I'm here to catch you, right? If it all goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. But you have to have there has to be some tolerance for risk kind of built into your process, right?
Yeah.
In order to delegate well, in order to give over that control to somebody.
I think your team wants to see that too. They want to see their leader give away things. And that sounds maybe a little silly, but I know for me, when I see a leader trust me with something, when I was on the other side of it, as somebody that was a volunteer or, helping with the staff, it really did mean a lot that, hey, my leader trusts me enough to give me a responsibility. But it also, there's a maturity level that you have to kind of seek with the leaders as well, because not everybody's ready for that big mantle. I mean, so to speak. I mean, it does take, a lot of time, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of time with the Lord, your, discipleship, a lot of things that go into it. But You know, I like to have people behind the scenes to kind of look over the set list, multi-tracks, you know, how do you put those songs in, you know, what are the BPMs for this? You want to raise them, you want to keep them the same, you know, little things like that, decisions that maybe our MD would do, but maybe we could pass it on to one of our musicians, and then train another MD. You know, we've
Yeah.
got 3 MDs available at any time. That would be a benefit, you know,
So
so things like that.
something I'd love to hear from you is how do you, and you've talked, I think a little bit about this, but I'd love for you to answer it directly.
Yeah.
How do you go about finding, identifying amongst your leaders, amongst your team,
Mhm.
identifying people that you can trust with handing off some extra
Yes,
responsibility
that's a great
to?
question because it takes time because you have to establish relationship with the individual, but then you watch them for a minute. I like to watch people. I'm a people
Yeah,
watcher.
that's great.
I do, and I kind of test the waters a little bit. You know, give them a responsibility, see how they do. Maybe it's a song that they lead. Maybe it's 2 songs, and then are they going to speak in between? Are they going to take the time to engage with the audience? To not just leading, worship leading isn't just singing a song; it's engaging with the congregation, inviting them, you joining them to sing with you.
It's the difference between performing a song versus
Exactly.
leading. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then a musician. So our church is probably set different than Shannon's, but we're kind of we have one service, we have a huge building. But we also have a big team. So we have multiple players. And then what I try to find with the players with my MD, which is music director, is, hey, who do you think is really good on the riffs with the electric? You
Yeah.
know, on the keys, is there, you know, and I can normally hear wrong notes really well because I got that ear for it. But you know, who's responsible enough or who's willing to learn and maybe
Yeah.
be rotated, you know, 3 times a month instead of, you know, once.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of do it that way. And then trial and error. I mean, you know, we've put people in positions that have worked really well, and then some, you know, just haven't, and that's okay because they don't want to be in that role, or they do, they're overconfident, and it just doesn't go in their favor.
Yeah.
It just really doesn't. I hate to say
Sure.
it that way, but you know,
Right.
humbleness is really the key there. If someone's listening as a volunteer and you really want to be in a leadership role, you know, just be humble.
That's good.
God's timing is perfect. You know, you're not forgotten. It's a timing issue and maturity as you grow in the Lord, and then
I love that.
yeah. So
That's
I think
really
it's
good.
just, you know, looking, watching, and then praying through, Lord, who do you have in this position that would be perfect for this? And, you know, we had to actually, I know you guys know Jordan Oliver. So
Yeah.
I love Jordan.
I love
Oh,
Jordan.
he's awesome. He's on the See Now team, songwriter, and he's a worship leader. And God had put him on my heart to invite at Crossroads. And we're looking for a part-time worship pastor, worship leader. And God put him on my heart. We needed a male because I'm obviously female there leading, and I'm part-time as well, which is perfect for me because I can't do full-time. So
You got a few things going on.
I got a few things
Yeah.
going on. Yeah. Got a few things going on.
Right.
But, you know,
Yeah.
but and there's other people there too that God's highlighted that I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, you know, we've got a great team.
Yeah.
And so just bringing Jordan in for this short time has been such a blessing, and he's a perfect fit for what, you know, we're doing at Crossroads. And I think of Lindsay, she's another great fit as a worship leader, as young, you know, in her 20s, and just, you know, just has a heart to lead people. So there's just so many different people out there that really, if they were given a chance, and we humble ourselves as leaders to give them the opportunity, you know what I mean? And I love what you said, Shannon, like Wednesday nights, I'm not even on the platform. I just schedule everybody, and then I pick a team leader, and they lead the group. They lead the musicians, they lead the team. I said, you're the point person. They're like, okay. So they know how hard it is being in that role.
Yeah.
And then communicating to the band, what kind of language am I communicating? You know, that's
Yeah.
kind of hard for a lot of people. So, but that's been such a blessing because I'm in the back, in the congregation watching them, and I'm proud of them, and I'm cheering them on, and I'm just worshiping with them, you know, I'm like, let's go. And I'm seeing them grow. And then I see, I'm hearing a lot of our vocalists taking voice lessons. They want to get better.
on, so
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
love them. I love you guys for that. You know, the musicians that they're practicing, you know, our pianist, she practices night and day. I mean, she wants to be perfect for us. I mean, just that heart right there. I love leading Crossroads worship. They're awesome. I love leading them. I love leading See Now, even though I really don't feel like I'm a leader. I'm just part of the group, you know, and it's neat to see you guys do your own thing and your own element of what God's like with songwriting, and you and Kendall, and the way you've have led that
Yeah.
that group is incredible. Shannon, the way you lead worship, it's just incredible. I mean, it's just everyone has these great
He's
talents.
a heck of a songwriter too. I'll tell you
He's a
that.
songwriter too. Yeah, his vocals are amazing.
Oh yes.
Oh my gosh,
And
but
yeah,
yeah.
and I'll tell you there's a leadership principle that I hear that I really get excited about, and it's one that I don't want anybody to miss that's listening or watching.
Mhm.
And it's that you're a real cheerleader for the people that you're leading.
Mm.
And when you're their cheerleader, it gives you that capital in their life. It
Yeah,
gives you that
it sure
opportunity to
does.
speak the correction when it's needed, right?
Yeah.
Because if all you speak is correction, they're just not going to listen, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, so you and I have both had the same vocal coach at one point,
Yeah.
Kelly,
Yeah.
right? And she is
She's
just
amazing.
incredible. And
She
I tell
is.
people all the time, one of the best things when you hire Kelly to be your vocal coach is you're getting your biggest cheerleader, and you didn't know
That's
it.
right. That's right.
She's going to be the biggest fan of your
She's
voice
awesome.
and going to be so excited about it. And it inspires you to be a better singer because you're like, oh, this is great. Somebody loves my voice, right?
Yeah,
You know?
right.
And then she'll be like, oh my gosh, okay, I love it when you do this thing. Try this. And oh, yeah. And she gets
Yeah.
so excited about it with you in there. And she's just, freaking out. And
awesome.
it's honestly, it's been really inspiring to me as a leader just to
Yeah.
have her lead me through a voice lesson like that. It helps me realize, like, oh my gosh, I need to lead my team this way, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and Kelly, it would never tell you, but she's a famous
Oh, I know
country,
she is.
country
Yeah, yeah.
music singer.
Yeah.
And you don't go into the room
Oh,
knowing
no,
that.
no.
You go into the room thinking, man, she's your biggest cheerleader. And that's who I want to always be as well. Whether what God ever does in my life, I always want to cheer people on and not have to express what all my credentials.
100%.
You know what I
That's
mean? Like,
good.
and sometimes we do that,
100%,
just to
sure.
have validity, but it doesn't matter. It just matters that you're walking with the Lord. So I agree. I mean, just being
Yeah.
a cheerleader, being behind the scenes, and then being able to put the wisdom in. That's hard to tell someone, hey, you need to work on this a little bit more. But if they're willing to accept it, then it's going to be okay. But it's always hard to deliver that because you never want to hurt anybody. You have that pastor's heart. You want to encourage them. But I will say this lastly is unity on the team. That's a big one when you're developing leaders. So we've battled that for not me personally, but before I was there at Crossroads, it was a really tough situation. And so I came in with a really big task, was to bring this team together of 50 people or so in unity. And God has really blessed us with that. We have a complete unified team.
That's awesome.
And it's taken a year. But it's prayerfully thinking.
Been there a year?
Yeah, I know.
Days.
A
It
little
feels like
over
it
a year,
was
I
just a
know.
month
It's been
ago,
awesome.
you know?
It's a great, I know. It feels like it's just
Wow.
yesterday. But, people have to be open to things that may not always, gel with the team or
Sure.
bad attitudes or whatever,
That's good.
and then they see it and then they realize, well, if I'm going to be effective in the kingdom, then, I mean, I've got to switch this. I've got to, tweak this. And they have. And again, it's just finding those leaders that are
Yeah.
willing to go the extra mile and to fight for unity.
That's
Yeah,
so
I
the same
good.
way.
Yeah.
I think what you're probably digging in on is just the importance of relationship.
Yeah, 100%.
So like
Yeah.
there have been times when I was quote unquote too busy to dial in to leaders, and
Yeah.
things can get pretty crazy when you don't have the relationship
Yes.
there.
Yes.
And like I think even when I'm beginning to bring somebody into my world, and I'm going to provide more coaching or more development or whatever, like we got to make sure that we actually have time for connection,
Yeah.
like relationship. Like it's got to get on my calendar.
100%.
Um,
I'm so glad you brought this up too, because I was actually going
good.
to ask you about this specifically, because if you remember a few months ago after one of our songwriting sessions, well, in between them, we were going to get lunch, and you and I were talking a little bit about this, and I was asking you what are some of the things that are important to you in leadership and in worship leading, and you were telling me about, you said, man, it's discipleship and it's relationship. And can you share a little bit specifically about what you do with your team members in relationship and discipleship? Talk about maybe kind of like the timeline of you have a new leader come into your sphere, right? And they jump onto your team, and you're like, okay, here's the goal, right? Here's where I want to take this person. what's step one and how long does it take you to get to step two
Mhm.
and step three? What are you, we talked about that in the car. I'm trying to lead it without
That's
giving it
good.
all away.
Man.
Can you walk
Secret
through that with
sauce
me a
right
little
here.
bit?
Yeah,
'Cause
I
it
wish-
was, man, I'm just gonna be, it was so insightful. I was like, oh my
Wow.
gosh, Shannon, this is
That's-
beautiful. This is brilliant. So I
Yeah,
don't want them
tell
to
us your
miss out.
secrets.
You know,
Man.
Okay.
I'm helping you guys out.
Man, and I don't know if we talked about this, Jonathan, but like I think you have to determine whether you're the right leader for that leader.
Oh man, that's so good.
Like,
Come on,
That is
Shannon.
good.
like,
Yeah.
like, am I the right person?
Yeah.
Because there's been times, man, there's not a whole lot clicking,
Mhm.
and I am actually trying to manufacture
That's so good.
something
it's so
that's
true.
just not
100%.
there.
Yeah.
Now I'm willing to put the work in.
Yeah.
I really am. If there's not another leader that's going to be able to make the investment, like at the end of the day, I think creating the time to, like, it's going to take more time. I have there's a great leader, man. I've been working with him for years, and we just see the world two different ways.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I used to think that was the thing that would drive me up the wall, and I'd want to give up or whatever. Like, but then I learned, like, man, what a blessing.
Yeah.
Because I learned more about myself in that in a season where we really had to dive in, because we had to make some shifts, and we had to get in unity.
Yeah.
So I think building relationship was so key. So am I the right leader to lead that leader? If there's a better leader and they're available, man, we're gonna have some conversation. Man, I think so. I'm trying to help them get further in their relationship with Christ and their leadership and that sort of thing. If I determine, and a lot of times this is done in collaboration. I rarely make these types of decisions by
so good.
myself. Like, hey, do you think that that investing in this leader in this season where I'm at, like I ask the leader above me,
Yeah.
hey, is this the right season? You can see more. Like, that's the one thing that I think a lot of people miss is the collaboration of people that have more context than you.
Yes.
So like they can actually see
100%.
what's further down the road than, so man, there's just not a whole lot that I have a weekly one-on-one with one of my leaders that invests in me, and literally I'm taking things to him and saying, hey, I know you can see further. Is this the right time? Would you, based on your context, and you know me, because I'm just going to tell you how it is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And once we've kind of determined that, like, I just have to prioritize the relationship. So sometimes it's scheduling a one-on-one meeting. Sometimes it's, man, can I begin discovering where they're at, and if it's a development session, but it's got to get on my calendar. And in that process, I'm discovering whether or not I'm discussing the big things are like, it's character. Again, going back to that first thing I was talking about, I go down the dashboard.
Yeah.
I go down the dashboard just about every meeting that I have with the leader. How you doing?
Yeah.
How's your family doing? How's your time with Jesus? It's crazy when people are reading the word and they're led by the Spirit. How much more in sync we are.
Yeah.
When we're going in the direction together, being led by the Spirit.
Unity. Yeah.
And then I think when we're determining, okay, what are they going to lead? I think you have to have a clear. You don't have to have a clear roadmap. Sure. Because it's going to be based on the leader. Like, how much time can I invest? How do they respond to coaching and that sort of thing? But the more you do it, the more you project that a little bit better. Yeah. And there's times it gets wonky. But I think the biggest thing would be, it's going to take time, because relationships take time. And then creating a plan. What specific competencies does the leader need to have?
Yes.
Yeah.
How am I going to train that?
Right. What does that look
And then
like?
how are they going to get reps? And then, like, I think I wanted to say it earlier. It was like, expectation. Like, you have to manage expectation. Sure. Because when unmet expectations are just the breeding ground for disappointment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm like, whether it's their disappointment because they expected they were going to sing a song this weekend,
Yeah.
Right.
or they were going to lead out,
Mhm.
and you have to manage expectation and instill confidence
Yep.
in those spaces. Take the right risks. So like assess it. You mentioned something about like having a like giving permission to fail.
Yes.
Man, if they fail, I didn't develop them well enough.
Mm.
So there's an ownership on my end
Yeah.
that did I put them in a position where they were not set up to win?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because although failure, or we don't say failure, we say you either win or you learn. You know what I mean? Like, so how do I frame that so that they
Sure.
continue to build confidence?
Yeah, and I love what you said too. It takes time to place them in those roles because a lot of times I think our failures, churches or leaders, is that we put people in a position really quickly because there's a need.
Yeah.
We need
true.
somebody to
Yeah.
lead worship, or we need somebody
Absolutely.
to teach such as a class, and their history isn't solid, maybe. And so we're not addressing the things like, how's your walk with Jesus? Even I think that needs to be a question we ask everybody on our team. How's your walk with Jesus? And sometimes that's misconstrued, like they're getting judged, or why are we asking this question? But it's the most important question we can ask on our worship team is how are you doing with Jesus? Can you tell me what's going on with you and him?
Yeah,
you know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah. Like one of the questions I'll ask, just man, what's the Lord been speaking to you?
Yeah.
Man,
Love
what are
it.
you reading right now?
That's a good way to
Love
ask it.
that.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Just
Yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, like curiosity breeds that conversation. It
Mhm.
causes you to ask more questions, and sometimes what the Lord's speaking to them is what He's trying to speak to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So gotta
Right.
use a leader that's in your
That's right.
in your space to develop you at times. Like,
Yeah.
now can I learn from this leader? I think
Mhm.
Yeah.
having that ultimate humility.
That's so good. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess what other things, have you kind of stumbled into along the way? What are some other lessons that you've learned? We talk about, like you said, you just found a bunch of different ways to mess up, right? Is
Yeah,
what you said when we
100%.
started out,
Yeah.
So what are some of the ways that you've stumbled into when it comes to leadership and leading people that you've thought it was one way and it turned out to be completely different from your expectations?
I think sometimes too, I was going to ask this question about you, kind of put it back
That's
to
great.
Jonathan here.
Hey, no, I'm asking the question.
Yeah,
today,
right.
Amy.
Let's go.
That was
Putting
the
on you,
deal.
I know, right? Yeah. It's kind of what, as I was, sitting here, I felt like the Holy Spirit was asking me to ask you, how are you taking this transition? Because as leaders, we love to lead worship. I mean, it's our heart. And I'm curious because we have to give up a lot of things when we lead others. They're great things because they're wisdom that's been imparted to us. But sometimes it's hard to let go of the things that we love so much to do.
Yeah.
And I've dealt with this with other leaders that were over me or I've co-led with. We kind of age out, and we're
Sure.
not that you have or anybody else here, but there
So old.
He's
y'all.
really old. He's really old. No, but I'm just saying there is a time in most people's lives, where, you're 60 or whatever, and those days are over. But there's a process of letting those dreams kind of die. And not that we're letting them die, they're living because you're imparting it to other people. But how are you taking that? And is that been a problem, or has
it's
it been
been-
okay?
In some ways it's been really simple and easy and part of it is simply that, you're talking about how Jordan came and has been leading alongside you, both of you part-time.
Yeah, it's
And
awesome.
for the last year, we hired a year ago, we hired a guy named James, and he's been doing that alongside me.
Wow.
And
Awesome.
it's been a really beautiful process of, 2021. Well, I won't tell his story too long because that's not the question. But anyway, he's taken a long time, kind of taking on more and more responsibility gradually on the team over the last several years, and eventually taking in this role a year ago. And it's just been somebody that I've been pouring into and enjoying my time with.
Yeah.
And so it's not like some stranger coming in and taking the job. It's somebody I've been pouring into that I'm so excited to see succeed and to see take this. And he's really excited about it,
Yeah.
and I'm still going to be serving on the team. I'm still going to rotate in and lead worship on Sundays here and there. My main role is probably going to be electric guitar, which is honestly probably the most fun part of the team anyway, right?
Yeah,
So I just get
seriously,
to
all
like
those riffs.
play sick riffs and like look cool, like
Yeah.
wear a jean jacket. It's great.
Yeah, denim
So that's going to
jacket.
be what that looks like. So that part hasn't been that difficult. The thing that I've been struggling with in my heart has been giving up control.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we just
That's hard
talked.
to
We've been
do.
talking
I
about,
know.
right? When you're letting somebody go, when you're handing the reins over, it's just giving up control. It's saying, "Oh, I wouldn't pick that song." Okay, I wouldn't. It's he's
I
great.
know,
He's so good at
right?
it. It's great, but
Yeah.
every leader's different. Every leader has their
Every
own
leader's different.
personality. Every leader has their own way they want to do things.
Yeah.
And it's just that's not the. I wouldn't, and it's I'm still technically on staff for another week and a half, I think it is, till the end of March.
Okay.
And but even for this month, it's been very much okay. Now I'm handing off the reins. You lead, and I'm just here. If you need something, I'm here to just be that secondary leader. We've kind of flipped because I was kind of the primary leader, and now and he was kind of the resource, and then we flip now, and he's the primary leader, and I'm the resource, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's been this month, and then moving forward, I'll just be the wizened old advisor, the
Yeah.
gray beard, right?
Yeah.
Just the so. But that's been the hardest part, 100%, and it's been so easy to identify, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
and part of it is just because that's something that I think it's easy to identify because because I have a relationship with the Lord, and because I listen to the Holy Spirit, and because in those moments He speaks to me and says, "Hey,
Yeah.
you need
right.
to give this up. Give up that. You need to give up this control. That's not yours anymore."
Yeah.
So that's been it.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard to and there's something that's causing that to happen, and it's just not being involved and having that. So I could see that being a
Yeah.
hard thing to go through. So I was just curious as to how that
Mhm.
went because it's, I know many worship pastors that they've been in a church for, so many years,
Yeah.
and it's their time to probably rotate off soon, and they've struggled with it. A dear friend of mine is still struggling with it, and he's like, "I don't know if I'm ready to go, Amy." I was like, "I know you're awesome there, but there will be a time for all of us to go, and
Yeah.
we just want to be ready." But then it's kind of exciting because God's not done with you. There's other things that He's going to be doing and pouring into your life, so it's kind of neat.
Yeah.
It's kind of exciting. It's an adventure.
Been this weird hybrid of worship, pastoring, and then going from I still feel like I got some stage time, right?
Yeah.
But so I'm just trying to prolong that as much as I can, just from
Yeah.
man, can I continue to offer that and be a model to other leaders? But I would say over the last probably 3-4 years, my assignment seems to have shifted a little bit.
Mhm.
And I think that there's it just like with kids, right? Like
Yeah.
you have a baby, you got
Yeah.
you got to milk that thing, give the milk, and
Stages.
changes,
Yeah.
and then there's
Uh-huh.
there's a point where you're rearing the child, and then you're letting them go. Like I'm in that preteen phase. Oh my goodness, it's
We're
an
helping.
interesting season. I love my kids; they're wonderful. But I just know, like with each season, there's just a different responsibility or what I say calling.
Sure.
But I think where older worship pastors may miss it is they forget that their contribution is shifting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like the pastor in the worship pastor
good.
position now becomes way bigger.
That's right.
I don't know what happened, but at 40, people started taking me seriously. I was like, oh, okay, I can say this, and you're just gonna take it at face value. Back in the day, I had to qualify it. Man, I've done it this way, this way, this way, this way. Hey, come on, you know what I'm saying? But I was
do
like,
know
once
what you're
this
saying.
dude
Yes.
had the black balloons, it was like all of a sudden, like
Goodness.
they just take your word for it.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important that we steward that season.
Mhm.
Like the kingdom of God is going to continue to advance.
Mhm.
Like Moses didn't make it to the promised land. Joshua took
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
That's
Like
right.
there's always the next leaders, always somebody. And what's my role? What's my role? What
Amen.
is my calling
Come on.
right where I'm at? Like
Yep.
I want to make sure that my daughter and my son do
Mhm.
better than I do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So what wisdom can I give them? Like
Yeah.
poor kids can't get away with nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But even when it comes to leaders on our teams, like
Mhm.
we're literally developing them to lead the church.
Mhm.
And what kind of concerned me, like when we went through the COVID season,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
like that season when we were going into the church, is I was like, man, what happens if the church all of a sudden needs to go underground?
Mhm.
What happens
Yeah.
if, you know what I mean? I just
Mhm.
began to think
Yeah.
about, I was
Right.
like, there's not enough worship leaders.
Mm.
There's
No,
not enough
there's
people
not
that know how
enough
to play
now.
an instrument and lead
Mhm.
worship and
Mhm.
and I was like, man, I kind of freaked out because I was like, when stage leadership wasn't the thing, I was like, well, okay, what am I gonna do?
Mhm.
And I think that was the pivot for me
Mm.
because I realized I wasn't called to sing on platforms.
Yeah.
I was
Amen.
called to pastor people.
Mhm.
And I think where a lot of worship pastors may miss it is knowing when the pastor
So
part
good.
becomes
Mhm.
So true.
the thing.
And I think part of that
So
for you
good.
though is also, I think pastoring people rather than leading from a platform. I think that's the calling of every worship leader.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Um,
Well,
I mean,
right?
Jonathan,
I-
like
Some of us don't
I will
realize
say-
it might take me a while to realize it and to mature into that calling,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
you know,
I'd like to
but
speak into that. That's a
Mhm.
great thing because I feel like in our culture, we've developed worship leaders not to be pastors.
yeah, right,
Mm,
And so
100%.
not everybody is a shepherd
right.
in that worship leading role. They can really sing a song and they can really
Mm.
engage an audience and they're really good at leading. But the job of a worship pastor isn't just the stage. It's really more behind the stage.
Yeah.
It's really dealing with conflicts, with
Mhm.
things that don't always work out behind
Yeah.
the scenes. And so I think that's what we fail to teach these leaders is that it's not just the stage time that they're going to get after COVID or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really the nitty gritty behind the scenes. It's
Yeah.
being selfless. It's listening to complaints and controversy and all the headaches of interpersonal conflicts. And it's pastor direction. And if you don't meet those directions, that becomes a problem. There's a lot of things in church politics that you have to deal with too that we want to put under the rug and those things happen,
Yeah.
and how do you deal with that? Is this church really for you as a leader? Is it not? I mean, there's just so many questions. There's a lot of worship leaders that are fearful because they're in a leadership capacity. Their overseer is not something that they can identify with or that they feel comfortable with. And so we have a lot of worship leaders that are struggling with their own pastors, so it's a big issue. Church ministry is not for the faint.
Yeah, right.
It's really not.
Right. Yeah.
But I love that because it's not just the stage time; it's so much more. But not
Yeah.
every worship leader is a shepherd. I just
No,
don't see
I
it that
know.
way.
Yeah.
But it's a calling.
I would say like so there is that shepherding component, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of the times like grassroots, like we just forget like everybody's called to disciple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody's called to it. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you're a believer,
Mhm.
you're supposed to
Make
go in the
disciples.
world and make disciples.
Yeah.
If we all got good at that,
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
if we all just focused on how are we helping each other grow
Mhm.
closer to Jesus, how are we
Yeah.
helping people take their next step spiritually, I think there's definitely a shepherding calling
Mhm.
or component there. But I think if we were doing bare minimum, man, our teams would be doing better. I think we would be growing. We
Yeah.
would continue to move further, faster, if that's what we were about.
And there's a real
That's
balance
good.
there. It's difficult sometimes to disciple people well and call them to something higher, call them to excellence, without making it just no fun.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense? That's
Yes.
something that
Mhm.
I had a stretch where I had 2 or 3 different team members that were out of church for a little while. They wound up coming and I said, just come fill in for a week with me. And they said, okay. And they came and they had a blast. They had a lot of fun. And they acted surprised about it. Like they came up and talked to me later, and they're like, "Man, that was so fun!
Huh.
Like you guys just have a really good time." And I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely." And I remember thinking after that conversation, I was like, "Do most teams just not have fun?" I was like, "What's the
Sad.
story here?" You know?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just, man, when I read about Jesus in Scripture, right? He seems like a fun guy. I don't know, like
Yeah.
and just throughout Scripture, you see a really high value placed on the joy of the Lord,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And that's
So
something
good.
that we need to model and our teams need to
Mhm.
model. And that's something that, again, when you're people's cheerleader, when you're having a good time, when you're valuing joy, when you're in the spirit and in those ways, it kind of it buys you the opportunity to speak that correction when you need to, right? Does it make
Right. Oh,
sense? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
not that, I mean, don't get me wrong. If you have to say the correction, you have to say it. But I'm saying it lands on fertile soil.
I
Yeah.
love the fact you
Does that
said
make
fun.
sense?
Yeah. Because worship is fun. It's supposed to be
Yeah.
fun. And
Yeah.
that's what we tell our teams, and we have a blast.
Mhm.
But one thing Marcy Priest said one time, and it really stuck with me, was that when we lead worship, it's like we're at a playground. And every time we were at the playground,
That
so you
sounds
probably
like
have heard
Marcy.
this.
No,
Yeah.
I haven't, but it sounds like
Okay,
Marcy.
okay. And you get to go to the monkey bars one day, or you
Yeah.
get to go to the
Uh-huh.
merry-go-round. And sometimes it's familiar, in
Yeah.
your worship
Yeah.
sets, but it's a new adventure because you're with the Lord and the Lord's there,
Mhm.
So
and
good.
you get to lead in his presence, and you get to lead the congregation into that throne room of God. And so if they're willing to go with you, that you're not
Mhm.
responsible for them to go, but you're inviting them a beautiful tray or a beautiful
Mhm.
direction of where to go,
Yeah.
right? And so, and that's with our intimacy with the Father during the week as we go to a Sunday morning set. But the thing is it's fun and it's an adventure. And if you look at it that way, it's kind of a cool thing to share with your teams. Like we get to go to
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
playground
I
together.
like
Yeah.
to say, I'll say it at rehearsal. Hey guys, it's recess.
Yeah.
I mean, what we don't
Yeah,
work our
seriously.
instruments.
Yeah.
We play them,
Yeah, that's right.
right?
100%.
We
Yeah.
play.
I know.
So like when I think there's just there's a definite component to making it fun. Jonathan, I'm just a witness of it, man. You're just a fun dude. So it's like
Thanks,
like
I'm
hanging
glad.
with you, man. We've slaved over some songs.
Yeah,
and-
we have, man.
Yeah,
But
we
you know
have.
what? The excellence
good.
matters too. And
Yeah.
like, and you know what's funny is and this is something I really struggled with for a long time, was what's this tension between excellence and joy, right? How do you really push for excellence without just stripping that joy away? And one day I just came to a realization. I said, you know what? Playing really bad music is no fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's real.
Mhm.
And that
Mhm.
was just, and so that really empowered me and set me free, honestly, to push some of my band members a little harder,
Yeah, that's
right?
Yeah.
To say, hey man, look, I know you can play that part better. Like, you didn't put the rehearsal in this week, did you? Like, no. Okay, look, hey man, come on, Sunday. Like, I need you. Like, okay. Like to really have those conversations
Yeah.
with people and then like Sunday, when the guy nails it, just give him a face. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like stank
Yeah,
face. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, just let's
Yeah.
go. Come on. Like be his cheerleader, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's that's how you kind of balance that, right? Or I mean, maybe they don't nail it, and then you have another hard conversation to have. But
Well, and you got to think of your hired players. We hire some players
Sure.
at our church because we need them,
Mhm.
because we don't have time for those mistakes.
Right.
And I don't mean that in a way
No.
that it's just accountability with your
Yep.
team. And so we developed, multi-track. I mean, we didn't develop them. We just offered them multi-tracks, but the
Mhm.
rehearsal mix is huge for them to really, because they know there's an expectation. You got to come prepared. Now that's
100%.
excellence.
Yep.
There is an expectation, and if you don't make it, then we're going to rotate someone else. And that's not a threat or anything. It's not to say, hey, we don't want you to play. We do.
Sure.
It's just that there's an accountability of a higher standard, and they go up to those standards if you really push them to it. But it's fun when you're there, and we try, if we hire people, we try to hire the right mix of people that really will mesh well with our team, our current team, because not everybody you hire is going to do that. And of course, we know them personally, so we know their abilities.
Sure.
We know that they're believers, and so that makes a big difference too. Instead of just hiring somebody that just can play a really great part, So we have to be careful who we hire, and then we don't hire everybody, but we do bless those who are dedicated church
Yeah.
members who have really got a great talent, and mix them with the hired players, and it's just a really cohesive team. So so we're just lucky with that. But it's a balance. I think you just set the bar not too high, but high enough to where they got to reach a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you set it up a little bit more, and then they reach again, and
Yeah.
then you have this stellar team that's like rocking it on Sundays,
And
your
reaching-
practices are like cut in half.
And reaching for something and getting to it, that's fun.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Yeah.
exciting.
It is. Yeah.
And hiring, and the hiring thing, we hired musicians on occasion, and probably the position we've hired most often is the drummer. I don't know about you guys, but that tends to be a difficult position to fill in church on a regular basis. And again, that was another thing that some worship leaders struggle with, right? They say, well, it should all be volunteer. Or if you've got some people on volunteer, that are volunteering, why would you hire somebody?
Sure.
Why would you pay them and not them, right?
Right.
And again, the way that I kind of came to see this, and I'm hearing this in what you're saying, is, I have some musicians that are volunteers that have been volunteering at this church for a long time, and man, they put in the work,
Yes.
and they take this so seriously, and they learn their parts, and they show up Sunday like prepared and ready to nail this. And if I put a really bad volunteer drummer on the stage with them, that is not honoring their work. Or if I put a musician or if I don't have a drummer that I can count on to consistently show up, then they're showing up Sunday having worked really really hard and diligently, ready to honor the Lord with their gift, and I'm robbing them of that opportunity. And so by hiring a few positions here and there, not every week, but sometimes, right?
Yeah.
We're honoring that gift, we're honoring that work and all that rehearsal work that they're putting in.
And that's what we want to do for our players that we're not hiring their members.
Yeah.
We're going to blanketly pay them because I feel like it's worth that. I feel like, I don't want them to think, okay, I've got to, but there's accountability if you're being paid that you're going to come forth, better. But even though they're not paid, they haven't been paid in the past, they've still brought their first fruits. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a really great team, and we're just lucky. But yeah, I think the standard has to be set. Vision has to be casted. You've got those two things in your belt, and you've communicated those effectively with your team. Then you can't go anywhere but up. You know.
Yeah, I think like the perspective when it comes to coaching a leader to excellence is critical. Like really framing that up. Hey, how about we go on a journey? I think this is one or two things that we can over the next quarter.
Yeah.
I would like to really hone in on. So whether it is, trying to identify the heartfelt need and speaking to it in a worship set, or, hey, I've noticed, when you have an open valve, you push more air and it causes you to go flat or sharp. You're lacking some control there.
Yes.
I need to hire you as my voice coach.
when you commit,
And that's hard to say.
Like when you commit to that, like, hey, let's go on a journey.
Yeah.
So here's what you can expect.
Yeah.
After every time you sing a bad note, I'm gonna look at you funny, or I'm gonna do one of them, or I'm gonna be like, or we're gonna have a conversation about it. And it's been really cool, like when it comes to like raising the talent, is actually giving practical application.
It's good.
Like, oh man, one of the things, stage presence, right?
Yes.
That's one everybody can get on board with, right? We can all be a little bit more
little
exuberant.
More loose. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At times. So like,
Sure.
I found it hard to really define early on. I would be coaching practically. Hey, I remember using this one. Y'all need to be a little bit more worshipful. What does that mean, right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then what I realized was I was given all these obscure and
Ambiguous.
very ambiguous communication for what I was actually trying to get. And I remember just taking a moment and really processing, how do I coach this in a way that's going to be effective? Then I had to realize, okay, I got to communicate the why.
That's good.
Like, here's why we lift our hands. Here's what it says biblically. Here's why we dance. And I will do this with our choir from time to time and just be like, hey, everybody, will you just lift your hands just like this? Man, it hurt, did it? Come on, it didn't hurt. But you know what the Bible, Bible says is, lift your hands.
Yeah, that's right.
It says shout. It says clap your hands. Like, and giving them that, and then saying, hey, let's all try this together.
Mm-hmm.
Let's, at this moment,
Yeah.
we're going to lift our hands together. So we're all doing it. If you don't do it, you're going to look weird,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
and just have those moments where it's practical,
Yeah.
but you're helping them understand the why.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would go further if you can, if I'm going to be doing some like, whenever you get into somebody's voice, like people just get,
It's a personal instrument.
It's so difficult,
It's
right?
totally
or
different.
they really wanted to lead that song, but you're like, no,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah,
what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if, as much as I can forecast that and just be like, hey, let's go on a journey. So there's like every like I'm in that quarter reevaluation of my goals. There's always something that I'm trying to improve upon, and I'm asking my leaders to speak into. So I'm actually wanting them to say,
feedback.
you didn't do that well. I remember I would have food face, just that weird
Yeah.
resting face in a meeting, and it just was not helping my leaders at the time.
Uh-huh.
And somebody gave me some feedback on that. They were like, hey man, I don't know if you're with me or if you're not. And I'm like, man, I'm with you.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
your
Yeah.
face
Heart and
wasn't
soul.
saying it.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I just asked for, hey, will you speak into that? It's kind of going to the what you were talking about,
Yeah.
humility. And but then I learned, I think when you project that with the leader and you say, hey, I think if you land this, this, and this, just open-ended, here's some things, whether it's for a leader, I might be saying something like, hey, I think you need to gain the perspective of the people that you're leading. So where are they coming from? That takes 4 or 5 to 10 steps
Yeah.
to really learn where other leaders are. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like
yeah.
you got to meet some people in the hallway. You got to know what they're, man, what are people dealing with? So there's
Yeah.
all sorts of action steps, but it pulls it into one thing. So it's not as big. So I'll try to paint that wide picture and say, let's go on a journey there. And are you great with me coaching you like crazy?
Yeah.
Will you trust
ask
that, man,
permission.
I'm here.
Asking
So,
permission.
yeah, like,
Huge.
and then
Yeah.
I can, man, then they're like, and I'll do things like, man, we have agreement. I can coach her really hard. She told me to.
Right.
And then this leader is actually
Yeah.
now modeling how to receive feedback,
good.
and that's going to affect my culture
100%.
completely.
That's
Oh,
so good.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I know every time I hit that one, every time I say tomorrow, it's like it's a little flat. And
Yeah.
and as we as we kind of dial in on that, it's crazy the level of focus and the victories that come. And then you're right when they win.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Be the cheerleader.
That's
Yeah.
so good that you're willing to take and we say criticism, but it's really feedback, but it can kind of come across that way. But it's the same, it's that humility, it's the position that you're standing in to say, I'm going to receive whatever you're going to come at me, with. And so that's really good. I need to be more that way as a leader to say, okay, well, I know I'm not perfect, even though I think I am. Right.
Yeah.
But there's always ways where we can be better, because then
Yeah.
that makes us even better on the other side of things. So that's really cool that you're doing that.
Man.
I love that, Shannon.
There's a great book called The Key to Everything
Mm-hmm.
by Matthew Keller. It's a book on humility. It is like one of the best
Yeah.
one of the best tools for a team leader that you're trying to develop.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just recommend that book if you're developing other leaders or
Yeah.
you yourself need to grow. That's all of us now. I've covered
there we
it.
go.
It
Yeah.
is.
I just
Yeah.
recommend that book. It was pivotal in my leadership.
It's we have our mentors that speak into our life. I mean, I do have that as far as like, okay, but there's something about your team doing that, because see, they're going to see all the little things that you didn't do right within the job. Where a mentor is more like casting an overall shadow of what's happening in your life, right? The things that we give them, the things that, the conversations that we talk about with our mentors, the things that we're struggling with, but it's another to have a microscopic scope on you as a leader that your team is seeing daily. So that's really cool. I love that. It's a good
Well,
approach.
I think anybody married that has a
Yeah.
spouse, anybody that has kids,
Right,
Oh,
yeah.
they know the
Yeah.
they know the
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
They
And-
do know, but your team doesn't. And when you're welcome, you're
Yeah.
welcoming that's
Yeah.
a pretty big deal. So that's really cool.
That's awesome.
Something I can take home. Thank you, man.
Great.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good.
It
man.
is. It is.
That's something that, and you're talking about humility, talking about what you're, going on a journey, and talking about
Yeah.
the idea of, trying to think how to put this, but yeah, what you had just repeated when it comes to receiving that feedback. Something that I love when I was talking to a team member recently is I was thinking about something they needed to improve. It was I'm sorry. It was when you were talking about, you always said something you need to improve on. I was talking to them, and I'm thinking about something that I really needed them to improve on. And I realized, you know what? I need to improve in this area too.
Mm.
Don't get me wrong. I may
Yeah.
not, we may be in different places. That's
Yeah.
okay. But I needed to improve there as well. So what I approached it in that moment was, I said, hey, listen, this is something that I need you to grow in a little bit, but don't take it personally. I do too. I'm actually the worst offender when it comes to this.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was overplaying, right? It was, overplaying, not,
Mhm.
not playing too many notes on the guitar, playing more than I needed to, filling in spots that didn't need to be filled in. And I needed this other player to hold back too. And so it was just that approach of coming to them and saying, listen, I need to grow in this. I need you to grow in this. Can we agree that we're going to hold each other accountable to growing in this?
Mm.
And it's a completely different conversation than if I just went to him and told him he needed to grow, and then he's looking across the stage at me the next Sunday. He's like, well, he's playing all that extra stuff
Yeah.
too. Why do I got to worry about it?
Mhm.
And it's approaching it with that, like you said, with that humility and owning your mistakes and
Mhm.
being vulnerable. I mean, there's just so many great principles that you guys are bringing out here that
Mm.
Yeah.
it's awesome. I love hearing it.
Thanks.
Anything else?
I think that's all I've got.
I don't know how long you've been going, but
Probably for a while.
Probably a while.
We've been venting.
It's okay.
You guys, thank you so much for sharing just your leadership insights. I am absolutely delighted that I got to talk through all this with you two. It's
Man, so
y'all
cool.
are
So
just
fun.
legends when it comes to leading teams, when it comes to leading healthy teams, and leading with humility, with excellence, with joy. It's just a pleasure. So, thanks, guys.